Support for this podcast and the following message come from Broadway in Fort Lauderdale. Two worlds collide in Rodgers and Hammerstein's The King and I. Hailed as breathtaking and exquisite by the New York Times, the musical is based on the 2015 Tony Award-winning Lincoln Center Theater production. The King and I boasts a score that features such beloved classics as Getting to Know You, Something Wonderful, and Shall We Dance. Don't miss The King and I at the Broward Center, November 20th through December 2nd. Tickets at browardcenter.org.
TV party tonight! TV party tonight! TV party tonight! TV party tonight! We're gonna have a TV party tonight! Alright! We're gonna have a TV party, alright! Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Everybody's gonna hang out here tonight! Alright! We'll pass out on the couch! Alright! Tonight! We got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Don't talk about anything else. We don't wanna know. We're dedicated to our favorite shows.
And tonight, our favorite show is Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, brought to you by the good people at Archie Comics, Netflix, Greg Berlanti, Greg, move your head, and Warner Brothers Television. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radledge, and joining me tonight is Token Girl, Alexis Haina. How you doing, Alexis?
So we're just cutting the crap and just referring to me as Token Girl now. Do I need to make like a name badge with that on?
Hello, my name is Token Girl.
I've made jokes to people. They say like, "So what do you do with the podcast?" I'm like, "I'm the Token Girl."
Everybody gets a nickname. Jesse is the disapproving dad. Robert is the metal coop. Robert Winfrey is just depressed. Everybody gets a nickname around here.
I guess lover of corgi butts doesn't fit onto the badge.
I can probably work. Some people have more than one nickname. I can probably do Token Girl and lover of corgi butts. Here, let me run it by. Let me run it by our chief operating officer. How do you feel about me referring to Alexis Haina as Token Girl and lover of corgi butts?
I like the lover of corgi butts. Because how can you resist a corgi butt?
Okay, so they only go with corgi butt?
I like corgi butt.
Okay. And that's our chief operating officer, Melissa Radledge. All right, so we're here tonight to talk about the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. This caught my attention because it had garnered some attention for being a very, very dark version of what was once a pretty friendly, pretty family-friendly show. Not particularly challenging, and they really went with it in a different direction. Now, I didn't realize that this was actually a takeoff of a comic that also turned what was a lighthearted fare into darker material, which is the comic book The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. But that's what this is. There was the show Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and then they did this comic book, which was much like Archie Afterlife, which was a dark zombie serious version of the Archie comics. And so this follows in suit. I learned all that after the fact, and again, what caught my attention about this and made me want to talk about it was people's reaction to how, quote dark and gruesome and horrifying the show was. And we'll talk about that in just a minute because I have some opinions there. But I threw it out there on my Facebook page. I said, hey, if there's somebody who normally doesn't do a podcast with me that wants to talk about this, this is your opportunity to jump in on something you might be passionate about. And Alexis, you jumped right in there and said, I'm in. In fact, you knocked Sean out of the way and said, me next. So what brings you to the dance?
Well, first of all, like, I'm going to miss an excuse to knock Sean out of the way.
Nice.
I'm kidding. Sean, I love you. Well, yeah, I had just finished the series on Netflix. I had briefly heard of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina comic, but it wasn't something that really stuck in my mind until I saw the Netflix. I'm like, oh, yeah, I think I'd heard of it. I did very briefly. Oh, great. We got an interrupter. Fine. You two, out. There we go. I did briefly watch the Melissa Joan Hart Sabrina the Teenage Witch series when it was on TV. I didn't watch it a lot because I couldn't get into it. Not that I thought it was a bad show, but I have trouble with shows where they add a laugh track, but obviously that the audience is not laughing because of all the special effects and everything. It's like, it's not live. They're not taping and they're not getting a natural audience reaction. So it just feels weird. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like stretching what they did with the laugh track on the Flintstones.
Right.
It's like we know obviously there was no one laughing there, but we could get into it because they played it off like a sitcom. This one, not as much.
Yeah, I have to say I didn't watch. I was aware of the show, and I think if it was on hither and thither, I would watch. I would watch Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but I don't think. I couldn't tell you too much about it. In fact, until I got involved with this show, I had forgotten what the cast was made up of. I mean, I knew what the premise was, but I remember I was talking to my wife about the aforementioned Melissa Rattledge about doing a podcast on the show, and she said, one of the biggest complaints she had heard about it was that the cat doesn't talk. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. It had a talking cat originally.
I had a couple of people saying, what's the point of watching it? Salem doesn't talk. And the joke I always make is that was actually something that bugged me because, again, child of the 80s and 90s, I didn't hear Salem. I heard Norbert from Angry Beavers. Same voice actor. So when he talks, it's like, I don't hear a cat. I hear the beaver. That has really nasty connotations. I really should have rethought how I said that. But I also looked it up online. I was reading some of the trivia for this show on IMDb. It turns out they actually can't do a lot with Salem because the actress who plays Sabrina is allergic to cats.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so we got to kind of keep Salem a little limited. That's the reason why he's not in a lot of the same shots as her.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Now, I know we talked before the show started about you picking up the book. You had not read the book, right? You had not read the comic book?
Not yet. I actually went to go pick it up the other day when I was picking up more books for the Source Material podcast, and comic shop was sold out, didn't have it. I'm looking at probably ordering it on Amazon instead.
Now, had you gotten to any of the Archie Afterlife?
No, I haven't, but I've been watching Riverdale, and now I really want to get into Archie Afterlife. That looks like so much fun.
Okay, so it sounds like you came to this show. Obviously, you're familiar with the Sabrina show plus the Archie comics, and you said you watched Riverdale. So when you heard they were doing a Sabrina the Teenage Witch Netflix show, and that they were going to take it seriously, and it was going to be slightly on the more horror side, what were you thinking about? What crossed your mind?
Well, first thing that crossed my mind was wondering if they were going to try to cross the show over with Riverdale. I know that the guys who work on both shows, they've been bombarded with questions, and I know they've said that in the immediate future, no, they're not planning for a crossover, even though we've established both shows that they exist in the same timeline in the same area. Sabrina lives in Greendale. It is Greendale, right?
Yes.
Which we have seen in Riverdale. We have seen Archie and Jughead driving to. And there's a couple of times in Sabrina where they say, so you from Riverdale? So we know that these are probably taking place at the same time and more than likely in the same universe. But because the shows are owned by different parent companies, Sabrina's on Netflix, Riverdale, even though I've been watching it on Netflix, it's actually owned by CW. They're not planning for it, but I know they said that they actually do want to try something in the future. They just really don't want people to get their hopes up right now. It's probably going to take a lot of red tape to make that work.
Well, they're both Greg Berlanti produced shows. They're both, I believe, Riverdale is. And I have to look it up, but I believe Riverdale is a Warner Brothers show. So it would take less than you think. But I also, from what I understand and what I was reading about, I think that they want to make sure they've got a solid hit on their hands before they do the old Family Guy Simpsons crossover, which is usually, I think Arrow had been on for a few years before it crossed over with, once it introduced the Flash. Like once the Flash got going on his own, it was a while before they started doing the yearly crossovers. So I think they want to get both established before they start, and then just like the Arrow and Flash and Supergirl, make an event out of it when it happens, make it a big deal.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind at least seeing little more hints of the shows being in the same universe. Even just a joke about, like, we had to drop, it's like someone dies in Riverdale, it's like we took them to Spellman Mortuary. Mm-hmm. Just a fun little Easter egg here and there, I think would be a lot of fun.
So let's get into this. Like I said, I kind of went into it cold. The only thing I knew about it going in was that, and I am historically a big pansy when it comes to horror. I'd seen some of the promotional material, and there was the buzz about the show about it being, right up there with like American Horror Story. Like it was supposed to be like really gruesome. Let me say right off the bat, this was. I would not. I hesitate to call it dark. Like it didn't feel like it. You ever see the movie The Craft?
I just said I was a child of the 90s and I'm a girl. Of course I saw The Craft.
Okay. So I feel like it's that level of dark. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We're just dipping our toe in here. We're not taking it too seriously. And, like, I remember seeing some of the promotional material, and, like, there's nothing in this show that's as scary as some of the promotional material that I saw. Like bugs, I think, crawling out of Sabrina's mouth or something like that. I think there's the one shot of her after she bites the apple, and then there's, like, the maggots and the hanging witches and whatnot. And that's about as bad as the show gets. They show it twice. They show it in the finale, and they show it early on in the season. And the one bit where at the very end, Madam Satan takes off her face and comes at the screen, and it's like a split second. But yeah, did you feel like the show lived up to the hype?
Actually, I think it did. I know they didn't want to go too overly bloody and gory because, in the end, this is still a show based off of a comic book, which is originally based off of a very family-friendly comic book, the Archie comics. And they have to know where their target audience is. This may not be, like, all family, but I definitely think they were trying to aim for I'd say, like, the supernatural fan base. Mm-hmm. This is a show I could see a lot of my girlfriends who love Supernatural watching very easily. So it was like, I could see that they wanted to go edgy, but they knew that they couldn't go too edgy.
Yeah, I feel like this would have, and I'm really showing my age here, I don't watch the new one. I don't have any interest anymore. Plus, I don't like any of the actresses. But back in the day, when Charmed was on and Alyssa Milano was on that show, first of all, Alyssa Milano, but she, come on, boy of the boy of the 80s.
I didn't say anything. It's like, yeah, Alyssa Milano, still actually pretty good looking when we saw her in the back of the audience at the Kavanaugh tapings.
Yeah. When Alyssa Milano was on Charmed, I used to watch that, and I watched it mostly for her, and I think, the one other famous actress that was on that show. And I liked Charmed. I thought Charmed had a kind of a goofy quality to it, but I feel like this is maybe a shade darker than Charmed was. I wasn't a huge fan of like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer shows, but maybe but it's right around the Buffy the Vampire Slayer motif, in my opinion. What little I know of that show.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, good to see I'm on the money with that. That being said, I really liked it. I thought as far as episodic television and what these Netflix shows do. And I think better than some of the traditional network shows is, I feel like they going in have a beginning, a middle, and an end of a very long story, and where this succeeds and some of the other ones have failed is this had the right amount of episodes for the story they were telling. One of the criticisms I've had of the Marvel shows, some of the Marvel shows, is I felt like there wasn't enough story for the 13 episodes that they were trying to fill up, and some of the episodes just felt like they were meandering. This was very tight. They had the perfect amount of story for the perfect amount of episodes, and I thought the story itself was really compelling. The story essentially is you have this half-human, half-witch woman, girl, who is raised by her aunts. Her parents are dead, and she is torn between two worlds, the human world and the witch world, and the witch world beseeches her to give up her human contacts, which she does not want to do. She has a boyfriend whom she loves and friends that she adores, and a life that she's lived for the last 16 years that she's just not ready to give up. And so the story is about... and I'm going to go off a little bit off on the beaten path here, but take my hand and follow me if you will. This is the story they were trying to tell in the Star Wars prequels. This is the story of Anakin Skywalker, who was supposed to be a decent person who is tempted with power and falls from grace and becomes Darth Vader.
And half our listeners just turned off their computers. Way to go.
Unfortunately, George Lucas is a terrible writer, and there was nobody around to tell him this is garbage. So that story didn't quite work out the way they wanted it to. But that's what we were going for here. This Sabrina is our Anakin Skywalker of sorts.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm still thinking that's a teeny tiny bit of a stretch.
Yeah, really?
But again, I think I chalk mostly that up to just the fact that George Lucas wrote Anakin Skywalker so badly it's really hard to compare him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is a much better written character. This is what George Lucas was aiming for, and it's like it's kind of he was aiming for the hoop, and he hit a bystander instead. Some innocent fan got a basketball to the face. But, that's what we've got going on here is one of the things I really liked about this is that you have somebody who's a good person, and every decision that she makes, manipulated or not, she does with the best of intentions. There's no malevolence in her heart. She's trying to fix things, or she's making decisions based on the fact that she wants to maintain her freedom and her connections, but each one of these decisions sort of leads her closer to ultimately what the villain wanted in the first place, which was for her to go full witch.
More or less. They've really built up this character, Madam Satan or Miss Wardwell. We find in the pilot episode this demon essentially takes the form of one of Sabrina's teachers and starts just kind of spying on her. And they're keeping her very mysterious. They've set up that she is basically working for Satan. There is no other way to put it. They keep saying the Dark Lord. And she has plans for Sabrina to just sort of embrace her, for no other better way, embrace her destiny and serve the Dark Lord. But they're still keeping it very mysterious on exactly what she wants to do and exactly how she plans to make this work. Even down to killing her own familiar at the end of the season, which that part actually kind of took me for a shock. I was like, whoa, okay.
Who killed their own familiar?
Miss Madam Satan. Remember the Raven?
Oh, that's right. Yes, the Raven. It was at the end of it was a moment that it didn't even occur to me that that's what was happening. It was just like I saw it and I laughed and then it was over. But yes, you're right. She kills her Raven.
Are you sure you weren't just laughing at Bronson Pinchot being killed? I mean, let's face it, we were all getting a good laugh out of that.
I kept wondering who she was talking to, and it was revealed to be him. I had a good laugh at that. Yeah, I like, and again, even she, she's not. This isn't her being like over the top evil and and trying to push Sabrina to do the wrong thing. She's it's Sabrina that always comes to her with an idea. I think the best example of this is when the brother dies in the mine, and she wants to bring him back to life because she wants to do that for her boyfriend. Nobody put that idea in her head. That's all her. Everyone's telling her, no, that's a terrible idea. Please leave the dead alone. And then this woman encourages her, but only after Sabrina has decided she's going to do this in the first place. It's like, in other words, she's not necessarily pushing Sabrina, but she gives Sabrina all the tools to complete the decisions that she makes, knowing that she'll continue to pull herself away from the human world and eventually sign the Book of the Beast, which is what the ultimate goal is. That's one of the things I really liked about the show is, and that's why I compared it to the poorly written prequel movies. This is a great example of how you show somebody who is essentially a good person falling from grace and becoming a servant of evil, whether she realizes it by the end or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that.
So what were some of the things you liked about the show? Let's start with Sabrina herself. I really enjoyed the actress. I thought the actress does a hell of a job. This whole thing sort of lives or dies on her shoulders. And I've seen many a show in the past where it's the supporting characters that really carry it, but the main character stinks. I have to say there's probably strong performances across the board, but she shoulders a lot of the weight herself. What is her name? Kiernan Shipka. And she really does a hell of a job. She's got a lot of chemistry with the other characters. The way I really enjoy the way this Sabrina character is written, and I think she gives a hell of a performance for the 10 episodes we got.
I agree. One of the things I really like about Sabrina as a character is the fact that so often, we know that Sabrina is clearly much more powerful than most of the other characters realize. This is why at the end she's able to summon the Hellfire to stop the risen witches or whatever the hell they are, the 13. And it's interesting because it's clear that excuse me, since she doesn't want to give up both her lives, she talks about how she wants freedom and she wants power. She wants to be with her friends, but she doesn't want to give up her abilities as a witch. It's not just a case of feeling loyalty to her bloodline. She doesn't. Her parents are gone, but her father was apparently a high-ranked warlock. So it's not a case of it's like I feel a connection to my father's spirit. No, she likes casting these spells. She likes being a witch. She likes having fun with this. And I think there's something very relatable about that. The idea that you have to, so often as we grow up, it's like you can either have the freedom or you can have, the power. It's like you can work at a job and make a lot of money and be a little less happy, or you can work at a job where you don't make as much money, but you have more freedom and and you can do more of what you want. You can't do, it's like, that's pretty good. You're not going to do both. And I like that. Yet it's like, no, Sabrina, we know where you are. We know that you want both. And we know how hard it is for you to admit that that's not going to happen.
The baptism scene is a particularly strong scene, and I really liked everything that led up to that and that scene itself, because she isn't just having a panic attack. She isn't just running away from it, like, oh, I can't do it, and it's sort of a failure of character, a failure of commitment. She has a conversation with the high priest, Father Faustus Blackwood, and he tells her, you will always have free will, and then goes through this ceremony that utterly contradicts the concept of free will by saying, if the Dark Lord calls upon you, you will answer, you will submit, and you will carry out his will. And she's like, that's not the conversation we had. That's the opposite. So she has a legitimate gripe.
Yeah, I was actually kind of hoping, this may sound weird, but I was hoping she was also going to get a little upset about her dress. It was a weird thing, because I remember seeing a screenshot of the episode before I actually watched the episode. She wears her mother's wedding dress the night of the baptism. It's also kind of her Halloween costume. And I remember her talking with her aunt, and she said, well, aren't I supposed to wear black for the baptism? And the aunt's like, oh, please, no one's, followed that rule for years. But then when she gets to the baptism, her dress turns black. And I remember thinking, that's your mother's wedding dress turning black. If I was wearing my mother's, well, I don't think my mother's wedding dress wasn't that cool looking, but if that had happened to me, I'd been like, hi, you change this dress back now.
Okay, it was one of those details that I thought looked fun on TV, but it didn't really speak to me. It's interesting that it spoke to you that way. I was definitely caught up in the free will discussion. And it's an interesting thing, because my understanding of Satanism is free will. It is essentially that the whole concept of Jesse did a bit on one of our Metal Hammer of Dooms where he actually read like the concepts of Satanism, and we did a bit where like well, how much of a Satanist is Mark? Which one of these, do I do these things or do I don't? It was we had fun with it, but it's always been my understanding of the satanic religion that you are boundless. You are given to whatever impulses that you have. It's very much a yes religion. Where and it compares itself to your traditional Christian religions, which are boundaries upon boundaries upon boundaries on behavior, which makes sense, because the whole historical concept of religion is to put boundaries on behavior so that civilization could prosper and people didn't Sodom and Gomorrah each other off a cliff, if you catch my meaning.
I'll take your word on the idea of. I was raised by Catholics.
Fair enough.
Former Catholics. Former Catholics turned Episcopalians. I'll let you, fill in the blanks there.
Yeah, my dad's an atheist. I'm not saying I was never a Satanist. Okay, let me be clear about that. But I've read a lot of things. And so I was struggling with that, to be honest with you. That this iteration of Satanism, of their paradigm for their witches' coven and their religion seemed to touch on the idea of being boundless and given to impulses and all of that, up until the point of, should Satan make a request of you, you must obey. How likely that is to happen. We're dealing with a fictional world where there is, in fact, a Satan that may call on you. So I guess the characters themselves have to take it more seriously. I think as a human living in, this universe, not so much.
No, we do know that the actual Church of Satan did throw a complaint at the show, and strangely enough, it had absolutely nothing to do with how the show's Church of Satanism was structured. And it was based on that statue.
Yes, that statue which has made its way onto like Slayer album covers and whatnot. What exactly happened here? Let's take a quick sidebar so we can go over the Church of Satan complaint.
Well, I'm trying to find the article here. I saved it on my Facebook page. Because I remember talking with this was the thing that made me laugh the hardest. Again, I did not read the comic, the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina comic, but I knew what the basis was, and I knew what they were going to really go into on the show. But after watching it, I was surprised that we didn't get a single complaint from any conservative parent watchdog groups. The idea that there was a show that basically has, literally saying, "Hail Satan."
Right.
And
repeatedly.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like, "Oh, this was too horrible. Oh, won't someone think of the children?" I'm not pulling that card out. But it was shocking to me. It's like, really? With everything else that gets complained about, and how many parents are like, "That's too rough, that's too dangerous, you're destroying our children." Like, and this hasn't gotten a single lawsuit thrown at it. It's like, I did not predict that. And then I find out that there is a lawsuit from the Satanic Temple over their monument. And I was like, okay, not what I was expecting, but all right. But yes, apparently the School of the Unseen, the Academy of the Unseen Arts, where Sabrina goes to study witchcraft, has a statue of, well, it's supposed to be Satan, but it's essentially a almost identical copy of the statue from a Satanic Temple, which is actually depicting a Baphomet. So, slightly different goat-headed figure. And yeah, the Church of Satan has basically said, we designed that. That's our statue. That is our design. We did not give you permission to use that in the show. And it has nothing to do with, we don't like how you're representing us or anything. Yeah, in fact, what was the quote? It's like, it's one thing that there's another ignorant television portrayal of a satanic panic-style satanic cult that engages in cannibalism, but it's another thing that they've used our unique and copyrighted Baphomet monument as the central icon of that cult.
Yeah, this was a money grab. They were like, hey, that's our intellectual property. You can't use it. Okay, But what did you think of the...
I was going to say, shows you what people really care about nowadays.
Exactly. But getting back to, I really enjoyed that scene, and I like the fact that that's what drove her away from the Book of the Beast initially, was that she was trying to maintain free will, and that she not only would have to give up free will, but she was lied to in the process. So the whole thing starts to look suspect. And, of course, she runs away to the, humiliation of her aunts. Which, switching for a moment here, what did you think of the aunts on the show? I loved... Here's the thing, and the aunts are a good example of this, but I like how everybody on the show had a thing going on. So, some of it got some short shrift, some of it got, more attention to it, but everyone had a thing, everyone had a story going on, as they say in wrestling, everyone has an angle. And the aunts, especially Miranda Otto, remember? That's the redheaded aunt.
Yeah, as Zelda.
Right. They were, I like the fact that she was complex. That she wasn't just purely for the witches, or she wasn't like the other aunt, which seemed to be a little bit more understanding of Sabrina. But she had kind of her own stuff going on, and there were times where she was tough on Sabrina, and times where she was more softer on her. And nobody was written flat. Everybody had dimensions to them, especially the aunts.
Agreed. And again, they're sprinkling a lot of mystery, and they're setting up a lot of stuff that hopefully we're going to see revealed more in the later seasons. The idea that Zelda and Sabrina's father basically wrote Sabrina's name in the Book of the Beast, when she was an infant, and the fact that and then you find out that Sabrina was previously baptized in the Christian church by her mother. So you sit back and you go, what was so important that, Zelda and Sabrina's father felt the need to put her name down in the book? It's like, this animosity between Sabrina's parents? Did they know something that, that we have yet to be, has not been revealed quite yet?
Yeah, there was definitely. It feels like the first season deals with a lot, but there's so much that was left on the table to deal with in the second season, and it has been renewed for a second season. Well, remains to be seen if they'll have as much success with season 2 as they did with 1 and go for a season 3. The Marvel series are all starting to get canceled, so one never knows. But for the time being, we have a whole other 10 episodes of Sabrina to figure some of this stuff out. I'll be curious to see what they do with with the dad, because on the one hand they wrote him as this this character that was trying to change this Church of Satan, and he was a reformer. But by the same token, then there's some of these dastardly things that he's said to have done. Did he really do it? Did he really write her name in the book, or was that somebody else? Who's saying that the father did it? Like, Madam Satan saying, "Oh, well, he asked me to look in on you," which we all know is a lie.
Exactly. And yeah, it is interesting. Like I said, that he pulled that punch of putting Sabrina's name, but then you find out that he was very progressive in ruling and being what was he, like the high priest, or was that the title that he had?
Yeah.
Like that, and that he basically was doing away with a lot of the traditions of the church. Though he was like, okay, this is like really stupid. Why are we doing this? The Feast of Feasts. He was the one who said, yeah, we're not doing that, and then he died. And then Blackwood came in and said, yeah, we're bringing that back.
Yeah, I got the impression, though, although it's not said, he's saying, oh, Satan came to him and said, bring it back. I have the funny feeling that it was really his wife whispering in his ear, because she was playing the long con.
Mm-hmm. Although it does kind of bring me to, admittedly, one of the parts of the series that I really couldn't stand, and that was the Weird Sisters.
I was going to bring them up next, because I found that as far as bully characters are written, I liked what they did with them, but I want to hear from you. What didn't you like about them?
Okay, this is weird, because as bullies, actually, I did like them. Especially since I've never actually dealt with, homicidal witches, but I got bullied quite a bit growing up, and there were a lot of aspects of those three. It's like, oh dear God, I'm having PTSD or something.
Mm-hmm.
That there were certain aspects like, yeah, that reminds me of some girls that I grew up with that Facebook will occasionally say, hey, do you want to send a friend request? I'm like, hey, you want me to slash my wrists? What the hell are you thinking?
Would you like to be friends with this person? No, I'd like to set them on fire. Why do you ask?
Yeah, pretty much. Now, the thing that kind of got me, when we were first introduced to them, they're always together. They speak simultaneously, and they move as one, and they walk at the same pace. I thought we were going to go for something to the effect of, how do I put this? That they were one person.
Right.
Maybe a hive mind, or maybe it was a witch who had been split into 3 bodies, kind of a thing. And that's why they were this close, and that's why they always talked like that. But as we find out in a few later episodes, they're not. The leader, Prudence, is the illegitimate daughter of Father Blackwood. And I do like the other two. It's like, are we your daughters too? Like, no, you're orphans. He almost says it with just this disgust level.
Right.
And I remember thinking, then why are they always that connected? I mean, obviously they're friends. Obviously they're close. Obviously they grew up together. But it's just very bizarre to have them do that, and there's no other reason other than they apparently think it's cool.
I don't know if you watched The Gifted at all, but there's a character on The Gift, or characters on The Gifted, that are, I guess, the progeny of Emma Frost. And they, as it turns out, they were a set of 5 clones, 2 of which ended up being killed. And so there's the 3 of them left. And the reason why they're clones is because their mutant power was mind reading and mind control. And they found that the more copies of this one particular mutant they made, the stronger the power became when they worked collectively.
Okay.
And so those three always wear the same outfit. They talk together. They, it's like seeing triple when they're interacting. It was like this one episode that I just saw of The Gifted. One of them actually separated from the three, and it was very jarring. Because again, you're used to seeing them as one entity times three, but they're clones, and that makes sense. What I agree with what you're saying. It's like, they essentially presented them like they presented the Frost character, Esme Frost. And then they were completely, then they decided midway through the season they're individual people, and there's no rational explanation for why they're acting the way they are.
Yeah, other than they think it looks cool.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I kind of wish there was something more to that. Not to mention, you named one of the girls Dorcas.
I honestly didn't realize that was her name at first. I thought she was making fun of her.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you, Dorcas.
Dorcas. It's like, okay, I know obviously you're going for older colonial era names, but seriously, Dorcas?
It's 28.
That's what I call the dog when he walks into a wall.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That seemed more. I didn't realize that was a name. It sounded like an insult. Here's what I'll tell you. They start off. I get what you're saying. They start off that way where it's just like, okay, this is just supposed to look cool on screen, and they're supposed to come across as creepy, and you don't need an explanation for why they're doing this. They just are, and they are what they are. But as the series develops, especially with Prudence starts to stand out on her own, especially the Feast to Feast episodes. And again, I like the fact that once you get past we're bullying you because you're a half-breed and because you're, once again, you're the chosen one, and we've been witches this whole time, and you come in for 5 minutes and suddenly you're the cat's pajamas and everyone's talking about you, so there's jealousy and all of that. All of that made sense, though. It's a little old hat. But then you get to the Feast to Feast, and you start to see Prudence has a bit of personality all her own beyond I'm a bully asshole. And then even the other two start to show a bit of personality. And then you get to the bit where they kill the Asian one and bring her back to life. And and there's legitimate concern about her. And I feel like as the show went on, they became more characters, and their reasons for doing things started to make more sense to me, and it became a richer experience when they were on screen. They didn't bother me nearly as much as they did in the beginning.
Yeah, I do like that they're giving Prudence a little bit more character development. I did actually really like the Feast to Feast episodes, although, again, it's kind of funny that episode's the only one that, from what I've heard, actually has gotten serious complaints from people. And again, it's not for the woman who slits her throat and says, "Hail Satan." It's for the teenage orgy scene.
Really?
Yeah, seriously, I've read a couple of articles from parents who have been disgusted that there's a orgy scene with teenage. Obviously, you don't see anything. Everyone's in their freaking underwear. But yeah, everyone's just like, it's like, oh my God, teenagers having sex. I'm like, yes, teenagers having sex. Congratulations. But again, I'm just kind of laughing. It's like all the things in this show that I could easily see conservative nut jobs losing their minds over. And the two things that people throw fits over is copyright and sex.
Well, we are consistent in this country, aren't we? I believe we discussed this on Monday.
Yeah, pretty much.
I could almost see the complaint if maybe one of the actors is under the age of 18, and you're like, it's a bit much for a child actor. But I'm pretty sure they're all over the age of 18, and they're depicting teenagers. And last time I checked, we do have teenagers having sex in this country. This is the thing that happens.
Yeah, I think the actress playing Sabrina, who I know the actress' name, but I seriously can't pronounce it. She's 19, and I think they said the youngest on the set.
Right. Yeah, I saw the actors in that scene. I'm like, yeah, they're all over 18. It's fine. And then again, the whole scene itself, there's nothing to it. It's a lot. It's a lot of grinding, heavy petting, and kissing, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've seen far worse on The Wire. Take a drink.
I did kind of like the line from Nick Scratch, by the way. Lovely. I love the little tributes to the devil and Daniel Webster on this show. I must have had to. My teachers made me read that book. Oh my God, I've lost track of how many times growing up. And it was like, so when they brought in Daniel Webster in the third episode, I got really excited because I know that story so well. And then when the other warlock comes and goes, Nick Scratch, I was like, oh, I see what you did. Ha ha. And for the record, I'm really hoping we see more of that. I love that callback to the how do I put it? I don't want to call it like the witch mythology because that just sounds so weird. But something similar to that. I want to see more callbacks to the earlier stories, like what the scene when they're invoking the names of the witches of the past. You know, and you actually could go through and you're like, okay, those were actual women who were accused of witchcraft, or those are goddesses or demigods from various mythologies who were associated with magic. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed the exorcism bit. I want to go back to the Feast of Feasts for just 1 second because there was something about it that really stood out to me that I enjoyed. I thought it really added to the quality of the writing, and I have to say again, the writing on this show is pretty high up there for me. I don't have a lot of problems with the way the show is written. I go back and I think about some of the other TV parties that I've done, and there's definitely a handful of, we could call them, the box of complaints. And I don't have, and most of those complaints I can't really ascribe to this show. They did a really good job with it. But yeah, that being said, when I think about the Feast of Feasts, one of the things that I liked about it was, the acknowledgement that a right, a particular thing in the culture, that despite this sort of tacit acknowledgement that we as humans, despite the fact that something may no longer be necessary, that it no longer serves a purpose, that we can't divorce ourselves from it. Mm-hmm. That something as barbaric as cannibalism, in a world of plenty, where no one is starving, but this still feels like this is still something that needs to happen, and we can't get away from it. And even when presented with an alternative, or shown, or someone holds up a mirror and says, see how bad this is, people are still going, nope, we are married to this tradition and we shan't not give it up. And the look of horror on Sabrina's face, it's like, it's not, I feel like the way the character's reacting, she wasn't reacting to the act of cannibalism so much as she was reacting to the fact that when given a choice, you chose to do the unnecessary thing because it's tradition.
Exactly.
I really like that.
I say the sacrifice itself does not bring more power. It is not to appease the Dark Lord. It is ornamental, plain and simple. And yet you have and there are those women, the woman who ended up slitting her throat, who's like, "Oh, please let it be me, please let it be me." And it's like, why?
Right.
The other part I did like about that episode was actually Blackwood's performance as he was trying to explain to the church. Again, you're saying that your idea is that the devil did not tell Lord Blackwood to go back into the traditions. You think it was his wife who was doing that. And I think that scene kind of sells that point a little bit with him sort of taking a step back thinking, maybe I'm not actually getting messages from the Dark Lord like I thought I was. You see not the panic, but the struggle he's going through, that he's got to admit he was wrong, something he clearly doesn't want to do. And then you have Crazy McNutjob just suddenly jump up, shout, "Hail Satan," slit her throat. And he's like, "Hey, door number 2, I am a way out."
I am the king of odd connections. I've connected this already to the prequel Star Wars movies, and I'm now going to connect it to Oz. But there was a character. Have you ever seen Oz?
Wait, are we talking the TV, like the prison show, or?
Yes, the prison show.
Okay. I was like, wait a minute, am I about to look like a giant idiot and screw up something that L. Frank Baum wrote? No, I know of Oz. I know of Oz.
That'd have been great. Have you seen Oz? I sure have. The Wicked Witch of the West. What a bitch! No. Yes,
I know of Oz. I've seen a few scenes from Oz, but that was not something I was of appropriate age to start watching when it aired.
Fair warning: if you and your husband should ever cuddle up on the couch and decide you got to binge watch something, hey, why not this? This well-awarded or at least well-nominated show, Oz. A lot of male penis on this show. It's quite rapey. So just you've now been warned about Oz. But
getting back to the original discussion.
Yes, there's a character on the show. You were just talking about this high priest, who lives and breathes this religion, and he has this moment of doubt, and it reminded me of Rebadow on Oz. Now Rebadow was a character who had been in prison decades ago, and he was actually supposed to get the chair, and he does, but he gets the chair on a night that there's a storm, and so just as he's being electrocuted, the power goes out, and he is essentially saved, and so the governor at the time commutes his sentence to from death to life. And from that point on,
everyone just kind of looks up. It's like, yeah, they don't come much clearer as a message from God than that.
Right. And so he, from that point on, and when we meet him in the show, it's decades later. He's an old man now, and he, for the longest time, said that God speaks directly to him. And this goes on and on throughout the 8 seasons of Oz, and somewhere in the middle of it, he has this crisis of faith, and he admits to one of the characters, "I don't know if God ever actually spoke to me. I think I just said that." And it was at a time in this in this character's life in this series where he's really having a hard time, and I thought so the bit with the high priest Faustus kind of reminded me of that. Where sometimes you wonder, are you really communicating with your Lord and Savior, or are you just telling yourself that to make things easier for yourself? And I'm always intrigued by people in having a crisis of faith. So I thought that was interesting. Let's switch tracks here. Let's talk about our human characters. We have the 3 friends. We have the boyfriend, who is Harvey, and as it turns out, his family were witch hunters, and the family owns the mines in the town. We have Roz, who is our social justice warrior character, who everybody I've talked to about this, won't watch the show because of that character, and I'm like, take it easy. Her shit's about 5 minutes long in the entire series, and she's not that bad. I've seen worse. And
admittedly, I was a bit worried at first how she was campaigning for the books and everything. I was like, okay, is she going to do this every single freaking episode? But they dropped that part of her activism pretty quickly. She quickly finds out she's got bigger fish to fry.
Right. And then we have what I assume is a transgender character, pre-acknowledgement, I'm guessing. Born a girl should have been a boy is the impression I get from that character.
I was actually going more for the non-binary gender concept, that which has really gained a lot of attention in recent years. The idea that it's not just boy or girl. I look at, what's the character's name? I'm already blanking. What's her name?
Susie.
I honestly don't think that Susie is transgender. I think she is non-binary. I think that part of it may be the fact that, it's clear that she, did not get, the hormonal jump. She has a very tomboyish body. She keeps her hair short.
And by the same token, when challenged and her family and there are issues going on there, she I don't want to say recognizes because there's an implication there, but she voices the idea that if you do not identify with your born sex, you are a monster, and so she's provoked by the demon that she doesn't know it's a demon that is her uncle, and she's and so she rejects. So she rejects some of these impulses because she does not want to be, as she says, a monster.
I could see that, but again, we're just getting to know the character, so I think we'll just have to wait and see if they are going transgender or non-binary gender. I think they could go either way. Regardless, I do like her as a character. I think she's really cool. I think she's very supportive of Sabrina. She is really cute. I'll give her that.
I thought they handled her character. I don't know if you watched Insatiable at all, but there's a character who comes out as gay and Insatiable, and I thought they handled Susie a little bit better with a little bit more class and dignity than they handled. I can't remember what her name is now, but the character who comes out as gay in Insatiable. It's one of the things that kind of separates me from some of the other guys that I podcast with. We have very, very strict, definitive ideas of sexuality, and I stand apart from that. I look at people like I'm very much of the progressive idea of whatever it is, within reason, whatever it is you're identifying with. People should respect that. And here we have this character who you and I can't pin it down. So the writers left it somewhat ambiguous, but there is that allusion to this character who is definitely struggling with her sexuality, and how she identifies.
I'm also interested to find out the fact that she keeps seeing her. It's her great aunt or great aunt, something like that.
Yeah.
Dorothea. Yeah, you kind of sit back and you go, so is she specifically seeing this ghost as in she's psychic? Can she see other ghosts now and she's discovering her... We're finding more and more that it's not just the witches in Greendale who have some powers. We get a little bit of Roz who... Yeah, I'm not calling it what her grandmother calls it.
No, she's clairvoyant.
Yeah, no. She, what did you call it? Like the cunning or something?
The cunning, yes.
Yeah, no. You have the shining. Say it. It's the shining.
You want to be sued, laddie? You got the shinning. You got the shinning. Don't you mean the shining? Do you want to be sued?
Oh, my God. Best Treehouse of Horror ever.
Very good for picking up that reference. Just at large, look, the show handled these characters really well. They handled the boyfriend character great, especially, after the debacle with the brother being brought back to life and him having to kill her and his sort of reaction to her. Even his reaction to her being a witch, it was like, it's one thing for you to be a witch, but you're a witch that has severely fucked up my family and put me in a position where I have to shoot my brother.
Pretty much.
I need a break from you. You're a bit much right now. I actually like the way that, they didn't suddenly make him forget the last few months of their relationship. He's able to sort of balance what he knows of this girl with what he's learned of this girl. And by itself, it's not so bad. But then when you put it with the stuff with the brother, it's like, you know what? It's a bit much for any one person to handle, let alone my 17, 16-year-old self. Roz, they could have made super annoying, but, they gave her just enough to give her some character, and then she was fine. And then we've just had a lengthy discussion about Susie. So,
I also like that with Harvey. You're getting almost a parallel between his story and Sabrina's. The fact that he's an artist whose father... Did they ever say what happened to his mom on the show? I can't remember if they do or not.
She died.
Okay. Single parent sitcom syndrome, got it. But he wants to be an artist. His dad works in the mines, and his dad is very much so, you're going to work in the mines. There's also kind of a current events relevance to that. Those who have been following politics know that President Trump was very adamant about saving the coal mines and giving money to the coal mines, even though many people have argued that A, coal has become it's a dying source of power, or B, it doesn't matter because the money would go to automation rather than to the workers. So I think there's a little bit of the concept of, maybe that is part of the problem, is that he sees that even though the mines are they say that the mines are one of the biggest suppliers to jobs in Greendale, but we know that coal mining is a dying career. Even if they don't acknowledge it on the show, we know that.
Right.
And it's very similar to Sabrina, again, that she wants to do her family proud, but she doesn't, want to be exactly like them. Harvey's ancestors were apparently witch killers, witch hunters. And Sabrina's ancestors probably did some horrible shit. And they're like, we are not our ancestors. Do not judge us by that. So there's a really nice parallel between the two characters.
Yep. I have to say, I thought the actors themselves gave good performances, solid performances. Nobody was on the Adrian scale of horrible women. Nobody made me want to punch anyone in the throat. Like I said, it was a solid performances all around, and everyone gets something to do. Everyone gets an angle, as I said before, but it doesn't take away necessarily from our main story, which is Sabrina's Sabrina's descent into evilness.
Her literal descent into hell.
Yes, her literal descent into hell. We've been at this for almost an hour now, about an hour, and let me just turn it over to you and say, is there any burning desires that you have, anything about the show that you wanted to talk about that we haven't touched upon yet?
Well, I mentioned before the couple of things I really wanted to talk about was the connection to Riverdale, and how I really am hoping that the creators will be able to get through all the red tape, and we actually can get, if not a official crossover, then some more Easter eggs planted into the future seasons. Yeah, I can't remember if it was from one of the creators or if it was just something that I saw on Reddit, but there was this idea of a Riverdale Halloween episode where Archie, Jughead, Veronica, and Betty go into a haunted house. Well, guess whose house they end up going into?
Sabrina's.
Exactly. And I thought that's kind of a fun idea. And I'm saying, I really, really hope that even if we can't get a full crossover going for a couple of seasons, they continue to just kind of acknowledge it. If nothing else, it really puts a smile on my face that they're paying attention to what the fans notice,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just kind of like little thumbs up for the fans. And I really love it when creators do that.
We did not talk about Ambrose.
Oh my God! How the hell did we forget about Ambrose?
We have to talk about Ambrose. He's described in the Wikipedia page as being pansexual, and that's fine. Show him banging a girl, because I just assumed he was gay, and I don't think I can be blamed for that.
There was the scene he was checking out Prudence when she came into the Spellman house. But you're right. Other than that, he only goes for Luke in the show, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I do like him as a character. I love that he's someone who was brought up through witchcraft. They mention a couple of times in the show that Sabrina would have been so much easier to raise if they had homeschooled her, because then she wouldn't have her connections to the outside world, and then it'd be easier for her to sign her name in the Book of the Beast. And we get that with Ambrose. He is someone who has no qualms about just staying in the world of magic. He's not interested in the world of mortals, but he sympathizes with Sabrina, and he loves her, and he wants her to be happy.
What I loved about this character was the tacit acknowledgement of, being an immortal who can't leave a house. And him, and on the one level, he's understanding that this is his penance for having committed or nearly committed a terrible crime, which is blowing up the Vatican. But on the other hand, to be a caged bird, And does he sing? Sure, he sings. But he's still a caged bird, and he wrestles with what all of that means. And I liked his story in the show.
Speaking of the whole caged bird thing, I do like the idea of the soul eaters being those little birds, those cute little sparrows.
Yeah.
That fly around.
The date he has with the guy, and he's and his reaction to seeing the birds is like, I thought we'd have more time. I thought that was perfect.
Yeah, I did really like that scene, and I'm really glad that he and Luke are continuing to see each other. If nothing else, they're a cute couple.
All right, anything else?
I think that's all the topics we were going to talk about. Again, I'm really, really enjoying the show. Can't wait for the next season to come out. They've scattered in so much that we really want to see. And it is impressive that they're able to do that and still have a compelling series. We've seen too often now movies and shows that they're not worried about what the current story is. They want to build up what the next story is.
Right. I will be, now Madam Satan has sort of revealed the plot. Her mission was to get Sabrina to sign the Book of the Beast and give herself over and body and soul to Satan. Let me say that if somebody put a gun to my head and said, you have to have at least one criticism of Sabrina, it would be this. After a while, hear him saying, "Oh, for the love of Satan, thanks Satan, hail Satan." It's like, we get it. They're witches. They worship Satan. I know that people use God the same way, but it got grating after a while.
Agreed, but part of that is, I think, the fact that I don't think we realize just how many times we say, "Oh my God," or "Oh, thank heaven," or that's really part of our culture that we say that even if we're not fully practicing Christians. And I'm willing to bet there were a couple of times they were going through the script and they had written just someone saying, "Oh God," or something like that, and they said, "Oh, they can't say that. They wouldn't say that." And it's just more noticeable to us because, again, it's like that's not something we hear that often. It is a little grating, but if you actually sat down and picked out during the day how many times you and your friends and family just said something to the effect of, "Oh my God."
Right. Reminds me of a Bill Cosby bit where he's saying how God is a busy entity. He's trying to solve hunger and peace and all of that. And that every time you call God's name in vain, you're distracting him from his mission. And so he says, instead of calling on God and and distracting him, call on his friend Rudy. Rudy ain't doing nothing. There's nothing to distract him from, and you'll get about the same results. And he does a few examples of, people calling on Rudy and Rudy messing things up. And, it's just like you say, you call on, like if you're at the craps table and you call on God and you crap out, it's the same effect here. Sometimes calling upon God does not exactly help you. So this is call on Rudy. And then, through the rest of his bit, he's going, "Oh, Rudy. Oh, my Rudy. Rudy, damn it."
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my one and only criticism. I thought it was a little over the top for me, the constant use of Hail Satan. But other than that, as far as how it ends, Sabrina calls upon the Hellfire. She dishes the 13. The Red Wizard, or whatever the hell it is at the end, just disappears because the 13 are no longer there. Sabrina has, with the subtle manipulations of Madam Satan and her own poor choices, has divorced herself from the entire mortal world and has fully committed, white hair and all, to being a witch. And so, there's a scene of her walking with the weird sisters at the very end. So let's a couple predictions. What are they going to have to deal with next season? I got at some point, I got to imagine there's going to be a quest for her friends to try to bring Sabrina back to the mortal world. There's going to be a little bit of that. I was starting to talk about Madam Satan. Madam Satan's mission here was to get her to sign the Book of the Beast, and she said, as she's going through her monologue with Bronson Pinchot, she says, like, I'm Satan's handmaiden, but in order for me to be Satan's queen and ascend to the throne, I have to get somebody else to do my work for me. I have to get somebody to be the foot soldier of Satan, and so that person is Sabrina. I guess that's the next thing here. We're going to start to see some of that. Otherwise, there's nothing for Madam Satan to do anymore. It was mission accomplished.
There's also the fact we didn't bring this up of Zelda adopting one of Lord Blackwood's children without him knowing. So now Zelda and Hilda are going to have a little baby in their house. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see how that works, and the fact that they've got to find some way to keep that hidden. I mean, again, they tell Lord Blackwood that the second child was absorbed into the womb or something. I don't know.
It was eaten. One child ate the other. And absorbed his power is what they said. And again, I don't know if I buy that he even bought that, but seeing as he was only interested in boys, he was like, I can imagine him thinking to himself, this is one cockamamie bullshit story, but it's fine. I don't want the girl to begin with.
My mother's actually a twin. I should call her up. Like, so what were the chances that you or your brother would eat the other one in the womb?
That seems like a good conversation starter. So am I. Ever eat your twin? Huh? You never
but
call.
Yeah, I am kind of wondering, because Lord Blackwood is not easily fooled. He seems like a very on the up and up character. He is very smart. He's got a good eye for what's going on around him. And I'm just sitting here going, so how long is it going to take him to realize what, all of a sudden Zelda and Hilda just found this newborn baby. It's like, I wonder where that came from. And considering the fact that they're already on pretty thin ice for the exorcism that they helped Sabrina perform, and Hilda is still excommunicated from the church, I believe.
She is.
Then, the Spellman family's already walking on pretty thin ice.
Well, that's the thing, and I did get a kick out of that. On the one hand, look, first of all, who would ever trust this family? They invite all these people over for dinner, and then they cast a truth spell on somebody. It's like I will never eat at your house again. And then you have Faust, who is clearly manipulating Zelda, and Zelda's allowing herself to be manipulated because she wants the approval of the high priest and all of that. He's utterly using her, which I just think is hilarious. But those are my predictions. Do you have any other predictions for the second season?
Not at the moment. Again, the show did a really good job sprinkling things into it that are not resolved yet, and it's those things I really want to see. We want to know more about Susie's ability to speak with her deceased relative, if she's actually psychic or if she's just got a special connection with the ghost. We want to see more of Roz's shinning. Yeah, it's like that. There, I'm not getting sued. We want to see her develop her power a little bit more. And again, I want to see how Zelda and Hilda are going to attempt to explain this, new baby in their lives.
Yeah, I suspect there's going to be scenes of the babies somehow connecting, and the jig being up after a time. But we'll see. All right, that is our discussion of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. A great show on Netflix. Not as scary as some of the news outlets made it seem. Like I said, it was going to be American Horror Story or something like that.
I fully confess, I got about halfway through the second season of American Horror Story, The Asylum, and I had to stop because it was really starting to freak me out.
Yeah, so there's nothing that even comes close to approaching that in this show.
No. Again, I think the weirdest one was the Feast of Feasts, and it probably would have been more terrifying for me was if I was not laughing at, again, Crazy McNutjob getting up going, "Hail Satan!" and slitting her throat. Because I was just like, what the hell?
Like you do. I can't tell you how many Thanksgivings I've gotten up at the table and said, "Pass the cranberry sauce, hail Satan, cut my throat."
Now I just have tempted to say something like that in my family's Thanksgiving. Again, daughter of former Catholics, just so I can get a reaction out of them.
That'd be hilarious, especially if you can gimmick your neck up.
I need to call Haley and see if she's up for one hell of a prank this Thanksgiving.
There you go. Let me know how that turns out. All right.
I'll have her record it.
All right. So that's that. Tomorrow on the Metal Hammer of Doom, we'll be reviewing the new Soulfly. Yesterday, we had another TV party for Voltron Season 7. And this past Monday, my father was on, Alexis was on, Ronnie Adams was there. We were all there on Source Material with Jesse Starcher, pitching our DC meets the Hanna-Barbera 2 stories. Next week
is alive and well, folks.
Next week, we got Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. We've got a Damn You Hollywood for the Grinch, where we're going to scar my son for life. My son's deathly afraid of the Grinch. Have I told you that?
I think you mentioned that. It's kind of funny, actually. I've got a girlfriend who just saw the Grinch, and she said she loved it. And
it's by the same studio that did the Minions movie. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Well, I keep laughing about it because part of me really does not want to see it, because the Chuck Jones Grinch movie is my defining Christmas movie.
Sure.
Well, short. It's only half an hour long, but yeah, it's always been a huge part of it. And I did like the Jim Carrey one, but I think that's partially because I'm a huge Jim Carrey fan. And I look at this one, and it's like, I adore Benedict Cumberbatch. He's one of my favorite actors. But then I look at the trailer and going, no. But it's already getting like an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. So
yeah, last time I checked, when I reposted the Rotten Tomatoes post on Facebook earlier this afternoon, it was at 67. It's supposed to be the number one at the box office this weekend. On the 14th of November, we're going to wake the sleeping dragon with New York Hardcore All-Star Sick of It All. And then another TV party. This one's celebrating Veterans Day. We're always celebrating something on the Rattlevision Broadcasting Network. It's Our World War with Andrew Graham from our Canadian office. The following week, we've got Justice League America, The Tornado's Path. We'll be doing a Damn You Hollywood for Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald. Our Metal Hammer of Doom Turkey nomination this year is Hoobastank Push Pull. The boys, minus myself, will be doing another Metal Hammer of Doom on Thanksgiving. They're going to review the new Throssenblatt. That's a real thing, folks. And then finally, we end the month of November with all things Robin Hood. We've got Hawkeye, My Life is the Weapon. Damn You Hollywood, the new piece of shit Robin Hood movie. We've got a review of POD Circles, because Booyaka Booyaka. And then finally, myself and Sean will be doing an on-trial for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And then on December 1st, the punchy pugilist, Mr. Toxic Masculinity himself. See, I told you, everyone gets a nickname or two. We'll be doing live commentary for Deontay Wilder versus Fat Tyson Fury. The first heavyweight pay-per-view title fight in boxing in God knows how long. All right, go ahead and tell them where they can buy your merchandise, lady.
I'm kind of in the middle of trying to get my corgi to stop running races around the couch. Can you hear him? Hear that sound of him like stomping on the ground as he's running? Can you hear that? Yes.
That's a fast-moving corgi butt.
Yeah, it's a fast-moving corgi butt. Yeah. Sorry, corgi got into the crack. Sorry, folks. I have a stubby-legged stampede going on in my living room right now. Okay, yes. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, we've just finished up our final Comic-Con for the year at Grand Rapids, Michigan. So our 2018 tour is at an end. We're getting ready for the big holiday sales. I'm trying not to laugh at my dog while I'm doing this. Damn you, Eddie. But yeah, we're going to have our big sale on both of our online stores for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. and we are currently in the process of organizing a charity raffle for the month of December. I'm still getting details on that. Profits will be going to Children's Mercy.
All right. For the girl who loves her corgi butts.
Well, the corgi butts going... Jesus, Eddie, seriously?
The corgi butts running amok.
I'm shutting the door.
This has been TV Party Tonight with your mandated reporter, Mr. Mark Radulich. We'll see you again next time. Be well, be safe, and behave.
Hail Satan.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from Broadway in Fort Lauderdale. Rodgers and Hammerstein's The King and I, based on the 2015 Tony Award-winning production, is breathtaking and exquisite, says the New York Times. November 20th through December 2nd. Tickets at browardcenter.org.